Alright. We should be back. Alright, I only received one question in the email since I left, so sort of have about 15 minutes where if you want to submit a question, please do so, and I will remain here until 8:20 to answer your questions, but I'm going to turn the stream off if I don't have any questions, and if I get one I'll turn it back on, and then you'll be able to either hear it in real time or you can get it later when I post it on YouTube. But the question I received was, is the ventromedial pathway unconscious movement because it is under the control of the brainstem? Kind of. This question isn't really related to anything that's on the exam, but I'll go ahead and answer it anyway because I don't really have any other questions to answer, so might as well. Movement that is under control of the brainstem, such as posture and such as correcting for gait, which I believe are the two functions of the ventromedial pathway. Yeah, posture and locomotion. It is tempting to say, basically what you said is correct. They are under control of the brainstem, and so they are sort of they're not something that we think about all the time. Other things that are under control of the brainstem are things like heartbeat, which we literally do not control, and then other things like breathing, which is a little bit subconscious. Unless you start thinking about breathing, then it becomes a very conscious action. But the reason I'm just sort of hesitating in saying that something that is under the control of the brainstem is unconscious activity is because it's not so much unconscious as it's just a very low level of control. It's a very primitive level of control. It's something that is managed by systems that we are not fully aware of their function from second to second to second, but they're always working. And, the more I actually talk about this out loud, the more it sounds like something that is unconscious. But it's just, something about that does not stick with me correctly, that sort of definition. Autonomic might be a slightly better word for the phenomena. They are self-regulating, and they don't really, the brainstem controls a lot of things, and the brainstem controls certain aspects of movement that are procedural. They are things that we've developed over time. They are things that interact with the musculature that's currently in place. There are things that interact with our frame. There are things that interact with the environment. So your brainstem can do corrections, and it can manage the way you hold yourself and manage the way that you walk. It was very icy the other day. Your brainstem and your cerebellum are working in concert with one another to constantly regulate, traction with the ground. They're gauging friction. They are keeping, your legs warm. They are keeping your feet warm. They're making sure that the blood flow is correct. So there's just this whole bit of autonomic regulation that goes on, and all of this correction and all of this management that is maintained by the brainstem. At the same time, voluntary movement, very explicit and conscious movement and conscious activity, also travels down into the extremities through the brainstem. So the brainstem, maybe that's why I was getting a little bit tied up. The brainstem does not control unconscious things. Unconscious things are, if anything, more a product of where they originate in the brain. And it is true that there are some portions of the brain that control things that are unconscious, but, I probably am just making this much more complicated than it needs to be. For all intents and purposes, that's an okay assessment of why the ventromedial pathway controls that the elements of movement that are slightly below our everyday awareness, and that might be because if they originate from the brainstem, then that would be a good explanation. Let's check that. Yeah, they're under brainstem control. So, maybe you were right this whole time, and I've just been trying to talk my way out of it because it didn't sound right to me. But you have the right idea. Just be a little bit cautious about conflating unconscious and autonomic. So, I do not have any more email questions. Do not think. Nope. So, I'm going to sit by the computer, and if I get another question, I will answer it. But I'll basically be hanging out here until 8:20. I'm going to turn the stream off, and I'm going to turn the audio off. But if you have a question, send it over, and if you have a question and it's outside of that window and you send it over, I'll answer it via email. It just won't be live on stream, but I think that we've covered a lot of stuff, and I'm sure you all will do very well. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off for now, and I'll turn it back on if I get a question. And if I do not get a question, I'll turn it back on at 8:20 to bid you all good night and good luck for tomorrow's exam.